Any health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
Welcome to Accelerated Health TV and Radio Show. I'm your host, Sara Banta. I'm a wife, a busy mom of 3, and the founder of the cutting-edge supplement brand, Accelerated Health Products. This podcast is more than just a source of information. It's a community for you and for those looking to optimize their health. And I release new episodes every Monday and Tuesday live, and a bonus one on Thursdays, and maybe a fourth if I feel like it. So remember to subscribe and add to your playlist so you never miss a show. And for sure, join my free health group coaching on Telegram. There is no downside. I teach you on a daily basis tips and tools to enhance your health and keep you going and moving forward and committed. And you are surrounded by amazing people that are like-minded and will encourage you. The details can be found on my website, sarabantahealth.com. And my goal, I need your help, is to reach everyone who needs me with my message of healing. Help me with this goal. Share this podcast with a few of your friends and loved ones, especially today, because there are so many people suffering from digestive issues. And together we can empower each other on our journey to optimal health. I'm so excited. Steven Wright is back, and he doesn't know that he's helped change my life, right? So if you missed our first interview, you got to go back and listen to it. He is a gut health specialist, and he's the founder of healthygut.com. He lives in Boulder and has the sweetest wife and customer service. Amazing. Welcome, Steven. How are you today?
Hey, Sarah. Thanks for having me back. I'm great. How about you?
I'm good. Last time we talked, I just had your supplements for a very short bit of time to really explore them and experience my own situation with them. And now I've really been able to pinpoint specific things that have changed. And my rock bottom was 10, 15 years ago, and slowly peeled the onion, took care of the heavy metals, took care of some of the IBS, took care of the hair loss, took care of all of the issues, the PCOS, the hormonal issues, insulin resistance. I had them all, right? But digestion is what got me on that journey the natural way. I was at the GI doctor, could not tell me anything. Oh, you've got IBS. Go take some Metamucil. Like, you think I haven't tried that yet? And it's been a journey. And of course, the different foods make a part of the issue as well. And I know you've got a long story as well, but your supplements have taken my digestion from being 80% good and still having those off days to literally, I have confidence in everything that I eat and feeling good. And the bloat is gone. It is gone. It is amazing. So I'm super excited to really dive into why these are different. My company is focused on cutting edge technology and cutting edge supplements. And that's why I love your supplements, because they are cutting edge and they put all of the other digestive enzymes and digestive supplements to shame. I've tried everything. I've spent thousands and thousands of dollars, and I just take like handfuls of them thinking, well, more, maybe I need more. No, that wasn't the problem. They just didn't work. So, where do we start? Digestion. Why has it become such a problem for so many people now?
Well, it's a loaded question. I mean, what we can say is that every single day, what you eat, what you drink, it has to go through our digestive organs. It has to go through that and to get into us and have the nutrition, the nutrients, all the stuff. It has to follow that process. And then we also know now that our microbiome, which lives inside of our, mostly inside of our large intestine, is basically another organ. And so we need a healthy microbiome, which is another healthy organ. And then everything that we eat and drink goes through this digestive process. And the assumption that we make, which is an incorrect assumption that I think is really what's hurting us, is that because we can't feel it and touch it, that these organs are doing just fine. And they're not. They're struggling. And the reason they're struggling is we currently have a society that is mismatched for our organs. We have a society filled with extra light at night and a lot of stress. We have access to scary things from around the world at our fingertips 24/7. In the Western, in the United States where I live, I think, where you live, we're just in this go, go, go society. And our nervous system is directly woven into our gut. And it's not really compatible with that. In that stressed situation, it makes everything harder for our gut and for that digestive process. And so then what this means is we've been on this crazy hamster wheel of different diets. It was this diet, then it was that diet. And then, I've tried like 30 or 40 different diets over the last 20 years. I think food really matters, but it also doesn't matter if your digestive organs can't process anything. And
Right.
so we are the most dieted ever. We are now taking the most probiotics ever, and we have more GI upset than ever. And so clearly food is not the only answer. Clearly probiotics were not the supposed revolution we had hoped they would be in and of themselves, not that they're all bad. But we do need to take a step back and say, what could we do differently? That is an assumption that we've been making. And I think that's where we get to the stomach and we get to digestive enzymes, these very basic things. But if they go sideways, everything else we do is much harder, if not impossible.
Yeah, and our society has so many more threats than it did even just 10 years ago. The spike protein has disrupted the gut, the amyloid proteins in the diet, the oxalates, the sulfur that I talk about, just these plant poisons that could be wreaking havoc on the gut. And like you mentioned, stress. I want you to find some person that is not stressed right now. And that stress, your body doesn't know if you're just stressed because of work or if you're going to have a famine or you're being chased by a tiger, and it will shut off digestion because you don't want to eat when you're being chased by a tiger, right? So the response is the same. It causes leaky gut. It disrupts everything. And that's why you should not eat when you're in a stress state. That's why every religion prays before they eat their meal, to settle down and rest and digest, right? To take down that level of stress. But it's so much easier to say than to do it, is to lower your stress levels. And you go to Europe. I actually got an email from a client that said every time he's in Europe, every time I go to the United States, I gain a pound a week because of what they've done to our food. And all of the GMOs, the glyphosate, all of the heavy metals, the toxins, the radiation, all of that disrupts the gut. So we are far worse off than our parents' generation. And then you add in all the processed foods, right? And that processed foods, you're eating food that takes away energy, but so then you keep eating it and you fill up your fat cells, and your body doesn't know what to do with all these toxins, and it's killing your stomach, and then it's killing the digestive power when you are eating the clean, right food. So you're not even or absorbing the nutrients from the good food that you're taking in. So before we get into stomach acid or how to fix it, I want to really pinpoint the role of stomach acid, because we're also, as you mentioned, we're in a trendy time of keto, paleo, low carb, carnivore, whatever diet it is. There was also this alkaline water idea, right, to neutralize the acid in the body. And we can get into that later. But what is the role of stomach acid, and why do so many people suffer from low stomach acid?
Yeah, well, I want to touch on what, the statements you just made about like all the poisons and everything in the world. I just want to say to everybody that there is hope, despite everything that Sara just said being, probably all mostly true. I do think that there's hope for us. I do think that we can devise products and different ways of healing that, despite what's happened in the environment around us, despite the technology world we've created for ourselves, like there has to be a way. And that's what I'm dedicated to. That's what my company's dedicated to.
Well, me as well. And that's why I bring up, there is hope and there are products, and through cleansing and doing the right enzymes and all of this stuff, there is hope. And I feel great. I feel better at 48 in this era of all the things that I just mentioned than I did 20 years ago. So there is hope.
Perfect. I love that. Yeah. So stomach acid is this super like misunderstood, and I feel like it's really been demonized, but it's actually one of our best friends as far as protecting us. And because it's been so demonized by marketing of from big pharma companies that have PPIs to sell you, and just the fact that it's really intuitive for a human to, say, for instance, with acid reflux or heartburn, think, oh, the pain I'm feeling, the associated story is too much, make the burning stop, too much acid. And unfortunately, that is not the actual medical truth. That's not what's actually happening. And that's just really confusing, confronting. And it puts stomach acid in this like bad guy territory, when in fact, stomach acid is doing a number of really important functions for us. When it's properly strong enough or properly acidified enough down there, number one, it's killing all kinds of bugs and germs and things like that are on our food or in our water or whatever we're drinking. This is a very important immune defense mechanism. Number two, it is detoxifying LPS, lipopolysaccharides. These are the part of certain types of bacteria in our microbiome of our mouth. Like we do this all day long. We swallow all day long. And there's these LPS toxins. Well, the right amount of stomach acid actually neutralizes those toxins. Now, if it gets through our stomach into our small intestine, we have like one more layer of defense there, but it can get overrun pretty fast. And then we start to have an inflamed intestine. And so we don't want that. Number three, and one of the bigger ones, is it basically releases through the acidic process, basically acidifying all of your food. It's going to release things like protein, various different types of minerals, magnesium, calcium, zinc. It basically starts the process of opening up. Whether you want to go with like an onion analogy, where it's almost like it splits open the layers of the onion, so that you take a very dense ball and you begin to open it up into all these threads. And then these threads can be broken down into vitamin A or zinc or magnesium or a protein that becomes an amino acid peptide or a fat molecule or something like that. That's the layer of digestion that has to happen for us to actually get the nutrients from whatever food you choose to eat. And so the stomach plays a really crucial role in that liberating of nutrients.
So I want to emphasize LPS for all of you people out there who are trying to lose weight, or you have unexplained weight gain and you're on a low carb diet and you're restricting. And I talked to someone today who is on eating 1,000 calories a day, and she's gaining weight. There is new studies that is pinpointing that LPS and endotoxins are a huge factor in weight gain, in this unexplained weight gain. And same with the omega-6 fatty acids and linoleic acid. But the LPS is huge when it comes to unexplained weight gain. So not only just for gut issues, but for those symptoms. And weight gain is a symptom of a bigger problem. With acid reflux, Steven, tell us what's going on and why people are mistaking it for. I mean, I also feel like as we age, is it just a natural progression to lose stomach acid? Both of those questions.
Yeah. So yes, as we age, it's not just our eyes that get tired and less good at seeing. It's not just our ovaries or our testes that produce less. Our stomach ages as well. Our intestines, our pancreas age as well. And so through the aging process, we can start to lose the ability to make the proper amount of stomach acid. Now, as we age, we also collect damage, and we can develop nutrient deficiencies. So if you have nutrient deficiencies in like zinc or magnesium, things like this, or B vitamins, these are all part of the process of making stomach acid. And so, it doesn't have to be that way. Like you could still be, well into your 60s, 70s, 80s, making great stomach acid if you have all the proper conditions set. There's never been a study that's actually checked, is it just age, or is it nutrient deficiencies, or is it infections that cause the decline in stomach acid? Maybe someday we'll get there. But it's safe to assume past 35, every decade you go, it's going to get harder and harder to make the proper amount of stomach acid for a number of reasons. So yeah, aging in and of itself is a risk factor for developing low stomach acid.
And so with acid reflux, people avoid tomatoes, avoid acidic foods. Are they doing the right thing? And is it a symptom of low stomach acid or high?
So the answer is it depends. And that's not what people want to hear, but it's the truth. And so the truth is it's not one way or the other way. There's several mentors I've had throughout my career, Dr. Jonathan Wright, Dr. Steven Sandberg Lewis. These guys were forward-thinking, integrative doctors who had a device in their office where they could actually measure the pH of your stomach. They could actually measure stomach acid. And so when people came in and complained of heartburn, acid reflux, IBS, they tested everybody, and they reported that 70 to 80% of people who have these symptoms scored low on stomach acid, meaning they complained of conditions that are commonly called high acid conditions. However, the test showed that they actually had low acid. So it's not everyone, but it's a 70 to 80% is a pretty strong possibility that if you have these issues, you probably have that condition. The reason why it happens becomes more complex, and it's where people get really lost and they kind of they tune me out a little bit. But basically, think about this. If you leave a kombucha or something, a yogurt-based drink in your car in the summertime, I hope you don't do this. Please don't do this test, because if it explodes like has happened to me one time, it is a nightmare. It's terrible. But if you take heat and you take live bugs with something to eat, there's like a bloom, right? Nature blooms to devour whatever type of food it can. Life just lives. That's what it does. And so inside of a stomach that has low stomach acid, that kombucha bloom happens, right? Our bodies are warmer than where the food is typically at. And then we have bugs in our stomach. And if the food sits there too long, it will begin to ferment, basically. And fermentation creates gas, it creates pressure, just like what happened in the kombucha thing. And so we have these little sphincters at the bottom, or at the top of our stomach, at the bottom of our stomach. And the top sphincter can be pushed open by too much pressure and too much gas. And when it gets pushed open, then there's going to be an escape of that gas, and maybe a little acid will actually come with it. And that's typically what we feel when we feel heartburn or acid reflux. Now, when I said it depends, it's because there are a number of other conditions that are also could be happening. Like they're much more rare. These are things like hiatal hernias, Barrett esophagus, actual ulcers. So there are other medical conditions that you should rule out if you can get an endoscopy to rule them out, or some sort of CT imaging, because there are rare cases of other medical issues that will feel like heartburn, that are heartburn, and they should not be sort of, you would want to do other things than do what we're about to talk about, where we take more acid to actually correct something that is a low acid state.
Which makes it doesn't make sense for the person that is experiencing acid coming up their throat. They're thinking they have too much. And yes, it's acid, but it's not as strong as it's supposed to be, right? It's not at
Right.
the below 2 pH. And I want to touch on one of the main roles of stomach acid you mentioned was killing foreign pathogens. I was prone to getting E. coli and salmonella, and it didn't matter what I ate. I would get it and then I'd get bloated. It would change my stools and I could tell right away. And it's like, God, why does this keep happening to me? Stephen, I have not had any of that once, or even a glimpse of it since I've started your HCL Guard. And I've taken HCL also from other companies. It's not the same. So before we go any further, I want to talk about the HCL Guard. I will not go without it. I take 2 with every meal, and it's fantastic. It makes me feel like my food is being broken down quickly, effectively. I feel the energy from it. There's no bloat. There's no misstep. There's no feeling sluggish after a meal. You don't understand. I was the person that would go to a restaurant, and as soon as I had a bite of food, I'd be uncomfortable to sit there because I'd have trapped gas up under my ribs and my stomach would feel bloated. I'd always think about, okay, what am I going to wear so that I'm comfortable sitting through the meal and having to get home before I get to put my sweats back on. So I don't have that anymore. And there's something different about this supplement. So let's get into what is different about HCL Guard and why it is helping with the stomach acid.
Yeah. So again, let's I'm gonna try to, if you're listening to this, I'm gonna try to create a visual idea. So think of like a balloon, like the kind you blow up for like a kid's party or something. Your stomach is not really a balloon, but it's a type of a balloon where we're going to eat a food like our dinner or whatever, and we're going to drink whatever we drink, and it's going to fill up into this sort of sac. And this sac also emanates acid and an enzyme called pepsin and intrinsic factor, other things in there. And it's trying to bring that whole mass of liquid and food down to a pH of 2 or less. And when it gets down to 2, 1.8, 1.5, the bottom of the stomach, that sphincter at the bottom of the stomach, starts to open and it starts to release little squirts of food. It's like a little squirt, like every few seconds, into the small intestine. And so that's a healthy stomach. That's a healthy digestive tract, how it starts. And so if the release of stomach acid does not happen in an appropriate time or appropriate manner, it doesn't kill those fermenting bacteria, which, like you were talking about, then you start to get bloating, like not even that long after you started eating, like barely after the end of the meal, you're like, oh my gosh, what is happening? Not again. That's partially what's happening right there, is like literally your acid levels are not strong enough to kill off those fermenting bugs. And so you're having this fermentation reaction that's happening. So what we want to do, again, slightly counterintuitive, but if our stomach is incapable of making its own acid, we can supplement with acid with each meal to, again, lower the pH, which is so counterintuitive. It took me like 10 years to be able to talk about this. It's so counterintuitive, but we want to lower the pH down to that appropriate 2.0 or lower level. And then everything really begins to work like clockwork again. And this is going to help with your motility. So if you struggle, like you alternate between loose stools and constipation, or you struggle with one or the other, both of those conditions are a motility-based condition. Things are moving too fast or they're moving too slow. And so one of the biggest drivers of motility is the stomach acid, the dumping of the nutrients. It's called chyme, from the stomach down into the small intestine. And so improper stomach acid typically will also then lead to digestive conditions with the stool. So like diarrhea, constipation, things like that. So going back to supplementing, betaine HCl is the acid. Pepsin is the protein degrading enzyme. And so there's a lot of products out there, like hundreds, maybe thousands of betaine HCLs with pepsins. My experience, I've been using these on and off since 2009 was my first betaine HCl and pepsin, was that it made sense and it helped me right away, but I also ended up using these other products. Like sometimes I would use a motility product. And then as I got deeper into functional medicine, integrative medicine, reading papers, I was also confused about why there weren't other things in the pill like intrinsic factor. And so HCL Guard is different because we did add intrinsic factor in there. And then we also added some motility activators, organic ginger, and then DGL, deglycerinated licorice root, which is really, really helpful for healing mucosal membranes. And unfortunately, of those, people, the 70 to 80% that need stomach acid support, some portion of those folks have mucosal membrane damage. And so it can be hard for them to introduce more acid because the thing that protects their stomach from the acid is the mucus. And if the mucus is patchy or it's thin, this could feel like pain. This is actually what an ulcer is. An ulcer is when that mucus basically goes down to the nerves and the muscle layers. The mucus is gone. And so DGL helps repair that in case it is going on, which it is often kind of found together with these states. So that was my idea around HCL guards. I thought, why can't we up the idea here with what we're trying to do, take two products, put them together at the same time.
So essentially, it's going to expedite the breakdown of the food and the proteins. And like you mentioned, unfolding the food, right? So it's unfolding it so that you can absorb the nutrients from the food at a much more optimal rate. And then it's moving it through into the small intestine quicker, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So the HCL Guard, like I said, I don't go without this. It has been a game changer for me, and no food poisoning. I always had food poisoning to the point where my husband would walk in the room and go, "Oh, do you have food poisoning again?" Because it was just a regular thing. And it was so annoying because it just disrupted my gut, caused water retention, constipation, brain fog, no energy. It doesn't feel good. With this, you're talking to a lot of people that are now on acid reflux medication. They think they have too much acid. They're sitting there listening. Okay, that kind of makes sense, but I'm too scared to jump in with HCL Guard and drop my PPIs. First, talk about what the PPIs are doing to their body, and then how would you transition?
Yeah. So a proton pump inhibitor, or even if you're someone who's gobbling Tums, like some sort of baking soda or calcium carbonate product, any sort of acid reliever, all of these things are neutralized. PPIs actually shut off the actual secretion of the acid. And so what this is going to mean is that the pH inside of your stomach is going to be high. It's going to be a 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, something like that. That is really high. Studies show that if you're above a 4, then you have up to a 2,000 times increase in LPS dumping into your small intestine every day.
Wow.
What this means is that you will literally be inflamed for the rest of your life. You cannot stop the dumping of LPS unless the acid drops back below a 3, and below a 2 is where the best scores are at. And you do have a defense mechanism in your small intestine to basically grab the LPS and try to detoxify them, but it can't keep up with that kind of rate. And so if you're on a PPI, you're almost guaranteed to have inflammation, low grade chronic inflammation for the duration of the PPI, if not longer. If you look at the black box warnings, PPIs were never intended to be used longer than 8 weeks. And it's because they're associated with all kinds of things. They cause a malabsorption, literally a starvation of nutrients that are necessary for bone health. So think calcium, magnesium, vitamin K2, all these things. So if you stay on a PPI for long enough, you will develop osteoporosis. It's the same thing because remember, the process of getting the nutrients out of the food requires the acid. So if you keep on a PPI, or if you're always trying to take a Tums or something, you're restricting the ability to liberate the vitamin A, the zinc, the magnesium, the calcium, or whatever it is from that organic food or whatever you've bought for food. And so you're going to lose nutrients over time. And if you go long enough, that can develop into actual disease states. You are increasing the level of inflammation and the level of possible infections, because as you said, now you are not killing whatever's on your food. So maybe that's E. coli from the field, maybe who knows what it is, but you're encouraging invasion of yourself and colonization. And then the other thing is that because remember I said that motility is a really, really big deal. It's actually the same thing for constipation and diarrhea. It's a motility disorder. Motility is what keeps the small intestine clean. We want a clean small intestine because in general, what we should be doing in a small intestine is a lot of assimilation of nutrients. We should be sucking the nutrients out of the food. There's a lot of immune system interplay that's going on in there. We don't want overgrowth. We don't want SIBO or SIFO or Candida growing there. And one of the big ways that they are allowed to grow there is if your motility slows down and you have nutrients and food available because you didn't grab it, because you didn't actually pull it out in the stomach. And so PPIs are linked to a much higher increase in SIBO and other infections in the small intestine, mostly because, again, I believe a principle of the world and a truth of everything is that life wants to live. And if given resources, life will live longer. And if you're going to give resources to yeast and fungi and other bacteria in places you don't want them, don't be mad when they show up there in big numbers.
Right. And I have to add in, these PPIs are connected to low nitric oxide. And if you missed my interview with Dr. Nathan Bryan, make sure you check it out, because low nitric oxide is going to affect your heart health. It's going to affect your erectile dysfunction and so many other things. So we need to get off of these acid reflux medications. So for that person, how should they start with the HCl? And how, for anybody, how do you introduce it? How do you test? I know you have the HCl challenge. What do you recommend?
Okay, well, number one, if you are on chronic long-term anti-inflammatory use, NSAID use, natural and anti-inflammatory drugs, it is recommended that you don't take supplemental HCl without like a very well-trained doctor supervision. The reason why is that long-term usage of NSAIDs thins out your mucosal lining and is it much higher. You have a much higher chance of ulcers. So people on long-term anti-steroidals should not use HCI Guard without proper supervision from their doctor. And then if you have an active ulcer or something along those lines, don't use HCI Guard. You got to wait until that's officially healed. So for everybody else, again, it falls on a spectrum. Some people that come to us, they've been on a PPI for 20 years. Other people just got on it, because they're stressed out because, something happened with the kids earlier this year. Those are two different scenarios, and they need to be, everybody needs to kind of realize that they're an individual, and you need to be an adult about this. You need to think this through, because on one hand, you have a product that is lowering acid to almost zero. And on the other hand, you're taking a product that is mostly acid. So you do have to think this through. If you're working with an integrative or a functional practitioner of some type, which is what I would recommend to do this bridging, what they will do is create a bridging. So you will slowly step down in your dosage of your PPI, and then you will layer in support for your stomach at the same time. You'll kind of bridge them together such that you transition off one into the other. You can do things during this time, such as take holozymes or take other enzymes, other support products that will make the bridging easier. But this bridging is highly individualized because some people will experience a rebound phenomenon. Basically, if you pull a rubber band way back and then you let go of it, it'll snap really hard. If you've been suppressing your acid for years, when you take off that suppression, sometimes the body reacts with that rubber band snap, and it creates a little too much acid a little too fast. So you got to be ready that this is going to be kind of a this is like going to the gym. Like, this is a long-term commitment to build the right body that's going to protect you and help you age well, help you have the best energy, the best microbiome, the best nutrient status, because there could be bumps and setbacks in this. It's not just a one thing to the next thing, super easy. You may have days of pain, right? You may have setbacks. And so you need to be an adult about this. If you don't have the confidence to do it yourself, I really recommend you work with a provider who can walk you through that. And if your provider tells you no, then fire them and find someone who will, because there's plenty of providers that will help you through that transition.
Absolutely. And with that being said, I noticed that I need to take more when I'm having a meat meal versus just fruit. I never take any enzymes or anything if I'm just eating. It's very simple fruit or something like that. And everybody's different. But this brings the question. Last time we did talk about enzymes, and I want to talk about holozymes now. I want to go through why we need digestive enzymes. And if you're talking to someone and their gut is wrecked and they're not digesting their food, which one do you start with? And then how do you know if you need both?
So many questions there. So
right.
To start with, enzymes are basic building blocks of nature as well as digestion. You have enzymes in your mouth, you have enzymes in your stomach, you have enzymes that come from your pancreas, and enzymes that come from your villi and your small intestine, and enzymes that come from your microbiome. So they're complex, they're kind of ubiquitous throughout the digestive process. And the reason why is another analogy would be like, imagine a field of wildflowers, and those flowers, I hope you've seen this before, but flowers will close up at night, right? They pull their petals in, and then when they have water and sunlight, they open up and they look beautiful, right? Like springtime is coming. We all want that. Acid is kind of like the sunshine. It opens up the petals of the flower. It goes from a ball of potential to this beautiful sort of flower. And so that's what acid is doing. It's opening up that walnut you ate, or that piece of meat fiber that you ate. It's opening it up. What the enzymes do is they come in and they sort of cleave the flower petals off, and they turn those flower petals into little pieces so that we can absorb them. And so without the enzymes, you also will have maldigestion, which will be bloating. You'll have increase of all the infections I just talked about, and you'll lose nutrients over time. You need these enzymes at the right times to basically turn those flower petals, go from a chicken breast to actually amino acid peptides that we can actually absorb. And so enzymes are extremely critical, and they suffer the exact same problems that I spoke about earlier, which is that over time, the building blocks of enzymes tend to go down. Like we lose our magnesium status as we age. We lose other nutrients as we age. We also get more stressed, and stress inhibits the release of the enzymes. Enzymes also need the right pH window. Remember, the pH is the acid window coming out of the stomach. It needs the right pH to really work the best. They work in a bell curve on a pH scale. It's kind of cool. It's a way to like contain them so they don't just go crazy and digest our bodies from the inside out. So there's a lot of things that could go wrong with enzymes. And so at the end of the day, if you were like, gun to my head, somebody's having digestive issues, they've tried a lot of different diets, they've tried a lot of products, and you're like, you have to make progress with this person, otherwise I'll shoot you or your family. I would start with holozymes. I would start with enzymes, because they are universal. Like, and if you don't need them, all you do is just get more nutrients out of your food. Like that's the downside. Like let's say you're super healthy and you don't have any issues. You're just listening to this podcast. You're trying to live to 150. And you're like, hey, I want to give my body a little bit of a break for a month, and just see what can happen. Mostly what you'll do is you'll just increase the amount of nutrients you bring out of your food if you take extra enzymes. So they're very safe. They're very easy to use. And so I would say start with holozymes. But if you're also asking the question, what is the one intervention that everyone should test for that they're not? I would say it's HCl. Doing a low stomach acid check would actually be the one intervention that everyone's missing. They're so focused on heavy metals and mold and GI pathogens and microbiome analysis that they're forgetting this just really simple, less than $50 test that could totally change their lives.
I would agree with that completely. And with the holozyme, like I said, I'm all into cutting edge technology and cutting edge supplements. I've taken so many digestive enzymes over the last 20 years, and handfuls, because I thought it was my body that just needed more and it wasn't working. But these are different and they're activated. Can you explain what that means?
Yeah. So like you, I struggle with bloating and, IBS since I was a child. And I would actually take 3 different enzymes at every meal. So I would take 3 different brands of enzymes because I couldn't get all the stuff I wanted in the same pill. And then for whatever reason, like you, it would work one day and then not work for 2 days, and then it would work another day. And it was just super confusing. And then when I had a digestive health consulting practice, I actually saw the same thing happen. And so this, as an engineer, is just like unacceptable in my world. It's like, that doesn't work for me. Number one, I hate being the smelly guy. I hate having my night ruined by bloating, especially if I'm, going to try to get lucky or something, and I want to go have some fun. And so I wanted to figure out why do these enzymes work sometimes and not other times? How come they work in some bodies, but not other bodies? And I found a number of issues in the supplement marketplace for enzymes that people needed to address to make a better product. And one of the biggest ones is what you alluded to, which is that enzymes work better with more mineral cofactors. When they're activated properly with the proper conditions, the most fertile conditions, if you will, they are way better at their jobs than if they have lackluster conditions. And in this case, what that means is if they have an abundance of the cofactors will give them more energy, electrons, to actually do the process of cutting up the flower petals and turning them into usable nutrients. And so I didn't think of this myself. I actually found a scientist who had a patent, who had done 6 pilot trials, and he was trying to tell the world about it for like 15 years, but nobody was really listening. And of course, I buy everything. I'm like, whatever miracle you're selling, I'll try it, And he was like, look, no, this is scientific. This is different. I'm like, okay, man, I've heard this 1,000 times. And I said the same thing. I bought his product. I tried it and I was like, oh, wow, this actually is different. What you're saying has validity. And so we partnered together and we were able to license the technology and then improve it to the next level. Just the way that I do things to try to make it even more bulletproof for everybody. And so that was kind of the genesis of Holozymes.
Well, it definitely makes a difference, and you can tell the difference when you take it versus any other digestive enzyme. There's an explosion of a histamine response, I believe, due to the spike protein. It's taking whatever your histamine response was 4 years ago and multiplying it. And people like me who've never had allergies, never had histamine issues ever, is experiencing it with certain foods. And I do take a histamine digest, which helps with breaking down histamines. But can you explain how these 2 products help with histamine, and then also about your new product coming out?
Yeah. So to start with, 16% of the population approximately has a deficiency in creating DAO, diamine oxidase. Diamine oxidase is the enzyme that breaks histamine down. And it's not that histamine's like a bad guy. Histamine's like testosterone or estrogen. We want the right amount of histamine. We don't want too low. We don't want too high. And what you're describing is also what I'm seeing, which is that there is an explosion of extra histamine symptoms happening. And so we have this genetic component, but we also have lifestyle factors. And these are things like alcohol consumption, infections, nutrient loss, all these types of things. They actually make it harder for the body to create DAO. Now, the third thing is also, I think, a really big player here, which is that most of the DAO is created in the small intestine from the mast cells. Most of the DAO is created in the small intestine to work with the mast cells that are in the small intestine. Now, if you have inflammation in your small intestine due to all the different things we've talked about on the show so far, it's very common, is what I'm saying. You have a reduced production of DAO. All of this means that you might be creating the right amount of histamine, but the wrong amount of the enzyme to break it down, or you might be creating even higher amounts of histamine than you should be, and also at the same time, a lower amount of DAO to break it down. Either case, we have an explosion of these histamine reactive people. And so our products so far that we've talked about, HCI Guard and Holozymes, will help reduce the inflammation in the small intestine. It will help increase the amount of nutrients you're getting from your food to make the proper amount of DAO. And then also in HCI Guard, the ginger root powder and the DGL, those are what are called mast cell stabilizers. Basically, they're herbs that help the mast cells be less aggressive in their response to whatever's happening around them. So it doesn't matter if it's a strawberry or red wine or beef, whatever it is, it's going to help it be less aggressive in how much histamine it releases. So in and of themselves, they can help people with histamine related issues, but they're not necessarily like what I would call a histamine treatment or something that like directly is going to make the histamine go away in the next like week or something. And so that's where products like you're talking about, the DAO enzyme, they come into place because they can actually begin to lower the amount of histamine that you have in your gut immediately. And I think that's what a lot of people can use is some relief, right? If you can get some relief, then you can start to take care of the inflammation. You can start taking care of the nutrient deficiencies. You can work on your nervous system because part of histamine release and blocking DAO release is having a sympathetic nervous system. So again, being too stressed is also going to help you have more histamine issues. Getting your stress under control is going to help you have less histamine issues. So adding in the DAO can be really helpful. And yeah, we do have a new product that's coming out here in the next 3 weeks. It's an enteric version of a DAO. So most of the DAOs on the market right now, almost all of them are either not protected at all in the stomach, or they're partially protected in the stomach. And what the data shows is DAO is super sensitive, and it really needs to be in the small intestine, not in the stomach. And so we have a version out of Spain that has like 96 patents, and these guys have been going crazy for 10 years. They really are DAO specialists, and they were able to make a enteric coated version that we were able to get our hands on. And so it's really helping people who have tried DAO enzymes in the past and like they've gotten some results or not results. And this version is helping them finally feel that sort of relief that I was talking about.
Amazing. I cannot wait to try it because I definitely have tried a lot of them and I use them. And unfortunately, I've got this issue. And I want to go back to what Steven said in the beginning. All of this is overwhelming. We're in all of these threats are coming at us. These tools are to get you back to where you can eat what you want, do what you want. I talk about sulfur and oxalates and amyloid proteins and histamine foods and all of these things. But when you heal your gut, and Steven knows about the Megaspore and the Mega Pre that are very powerful in being a spore biotic and supporting the gut and increasing resilience. And these digestive enzymes increase your resilience. And that's the goal. So I can go out to a restaurant and I can possibly eat non-organic food and my gut's going to be able to handle it. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff to do, but these are tools to get you back to being able to do what you want. Holozymes, HCI Guard, they are found at Accelerated Health Products, so make sure you check them out. Steven, we'll have to have you back on to dive even deeper into histamines, and you're just a wealth of knowledge, so thank you. And I love your company and the way you guys are so personable and attentive, and you remind me of me and our company and the way I feel like there's so many similarities with the way we run our businesses. So I really appreciate and respect that. So thank you. And thank you everyone for tuning in today. If you need my help, if you're overwhelmed and you don't know where to start, feel free to reach out to me through my website, sarabantahealth.com. Happy to put together a protocol for you and join my free group coaching on Telegram. There's no downside. Ask your questions about these supplements that we talked about. I share daily tips and tools to improve your health and answer your questions. And there's more information on my website, sarabantahealth.com. Don't forget to follow me on social media, Accelerated Health Products. And you can reach this podcast on over 100 platforms, including Spotify, iTunes, and iHeartRadio. Just search for Accelerated Health TV and Radio Show. And remember, I'm live every Monday and Tuesday. And you can use coupon WELCOME10 to get 10% off your first order. Thanks again for joining us here, and have a great week.